What if one of the most effective ways to change a habit isn't to push harder, but to pause, briefly and on purpose? In this episode today, we're talking about short intentional resets, like using a pause from alcohol as a familiar example for some, and how taking a break for a defined period can help you notice patterns and decide what actually feels worth carrying forward. We experience 1,000 waking minutes on average every day. How are you spending yours? I'm Dr. Wendy Bazilian, and you're listening to 1,000 Waking Minutes. I can't wait to connect with you here with practical ways to eat well, move daily, and be healthy, to optimize every waking minute you live for a happier, healthier life. Thank you for sharing some of your waking minutes with me today. Let's get started.
I'm saying yes to better days, yes. I'm on my way, yes. It's gonna be okay, yeah.
Hello and welcome to 1,000 Waking Minutes. I'm Dr. Wendy Bazilian. I'm so glad you're here, sharing a few of your minutes with me today. Have you ever noticed that January has this built-in invitation to pause? The calendar sort of flips over and the champagne flutes that for some of us only come out a few times a year, if that, they get washed and put away. And suddenly everyone's talking about resets, whether it's boot camps or going dry, damp, detoxing, decluttering. Well, today we're talking about pauses. And what if that pause that we could have wasn't really about what we take away, but what we notice and reframe? In our 1,000 waking minutes, as we kick off a new year, we all get the same. And I want to remind us of that. 1,000 waking minutes, that's life's currency, really. In fact, in a day, it's 1,440 minutes. So I'm counting in the sleep as being part of life's currency. No matter who we are, where we live, how much money we have, how educated we are, how we spend those 1,000 waking minutes is what matters. And how we spend them shapes our days and over time, our lives. And we all get the same. It's a great harmonizer, one of few in this world. But what if one of the smartest things we could do for our focus and our energy and our health wasn't to push harder or use those minutes so much more efficiently? And I'll be talking a lot about efficiency this year. But to take a pause sometimes to get toward those goals. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to frame the idea of taking a pause from alcohol. Some people do a dry January. I invite that if that's something you wish. But I'm going to use that as a framing for these moments to reset and taking a pause, and how we're going to approach that today and this year toward our goal. So years ago, I worked at the Golden Door Spa and Resort for over a decade. And at Golden Door, we didn't serve alcohol. That sometimes surprised people upon their first visit. Many people return to the Golden Door and continue to return. And so they expect it now, they know it. But on the first visit, many don't know. I mean, this is a luxury resort and spa, world renowned. And the guests were extraordinary. Anyone there is a VIP. We always call all guests. And that's regardless of who they are in terms of fame or fortune. But indeed, we had CEOs and artists and scientists and parents and teachers, a lot of different types of people. People with long to-do lists, probably like you, because the average age, was 40, 50 plus. Some had wonderfully deep wine cellars that they had been accumulating over time. And many would arrive sort of expecting the usual wine with dinner or a happy hour before dinner, something like that. And so I share this story because the first 2 nights of a 7-day stay, which was the norm, that was how you came Sunday to Sunday, were always interesting. I remember because I would spend a lot of meals there and I would do evening talks and I would be there during mealtime. Guests would often, especially the first timers who didn't know this, they'd be a little restless. They'd be like, water? Question mark. Someone would joke and they'd talk about it being 5 o'clock somewhere and make a big hoo-ha about that. Some would just ask, like, where is really the wine? Or try to whisper, like, can you bring in the private stash? The conversations were funny and delightful. Some would try to summon the sommelier. They just didn't believe it because life as we know it in most restaurants and in social settings have offerings that include beverages that contain alcohol. But by the middle of the week, something really shifted. And there's a lot I could say about midweek shifts at Golden Door. And maybe I'll talk about that sometime, the things that were so fascinating. But this is specific to wine at dinner. Well, at dinner time, the conversations would deepen. They would stay longer at the table. They would linger longer. They would continue their laughing, debating, telling of stories. And it was all absent of any alcohol. And the week would progress. And when Saturday night would arrive, the last night at Golden Door, guess what? We offered a glass of wine as optional. It wasn't put out on the table. It wasn't presumed. It was offered to sort of mark the end of the week, the re-entry into the real world. And you know what? Many of them smiled and said, you know what? I'm good. And they passed. Like something that at the beginning was almost like a sense of, where is that? And this is really the power of the pause. We sort of placed this on the guests so that they could practice with it. And it wasn't punishment. It was perspective, really. It was part of the intentionality built into the day. And they started to realize, as I have in many ways over time, and clients that I've worked with have realized, that the ritual wasn't really about what was in the glass at all. It was about some connection or some transition or some bridge. And what they found was a new connection that happened around the time. So I want to talk a little bit about that and frame it with alcohol because it's such a clear one in our society. And let's be clear, I want to be upfront about this. I'm not talking about alcohol dependency or misuse, where it affects millions and requires full abstinence and medical care and support from family and loved ones. But what we're talking about today are sort of the everyday patterns that we get into: the glass of wine while cooking, the beer with our pizza, the scrolling before bed moments, habits and small rituals that quietly become automatic and we learn to expect them. A pause from that can let us start to see those patterns again. And it's almost like opening a window when you realize the room is stuffy. Sometimes you live in it until it gets so much, or someone opens a window and you go, oh, I didn't even realize that. So this isn't just about one behavior, but I thought I would frame it in this way today because it is this time of year. And many people do talk about sort of the dry January moment or these 1 month resets. The science does show us that strategic stops, whether it's from alcohol or social media or sugar or the constant pace of our busyness, it actually can change how our brain and our body function. So this is what fascinates me. And I love to talk about the returns on investment, or the returns on intention, I'm increasingly calling it over time, is the science, really. That these pauses aren't just physical, they become psychological, emotional, they can even become creative. And it's sort of like a recalibration that happens when you stop doing something that feels like it's become automatic. So today we're going to look at the ROI a little bit, the return on intention, the return on our effort, and then we'll put it into practice as well. So we'll explore what happens in the brain when you take a break from a habit, why your energy and focus can come back online, sort of, if I can use a computer analogy there, and how something as simple as swapping what's in your glass, maybe, can ripple into other things like better sleep, better mood, maybe better meaning. So we'll do it with real science, studies that show us how it works, and we'll take it to practice with human ways to experience it. The pause that refreshes, so to speak, for yourself. I love when science sort of supports what we feel intuitively. And when it comes to nutrition, I'll often say, I exclaimed this out loud in front of a big audience one time. I said, I love when modern science shows what Mother Nature knows. That was when I was talking about phytochemicals and antioxidants. But I love when science really catches up with sort of like what we feel or sort of know or common sense. It's sort of like a deep breath. When you're, holding a big load and you put it down, you're like, yeah, I'm so glad. That's sort of what I was thinking. And it becomes almost like a wisdom of sorts. Your body and your brain are designed really for renewal and recalibration. So let's look at what it means when we pause. When I keep looking aside, I'm like thinking in my brain, if you're watching this versus just listening, and I happen to see a beautiful sky outside at the moment, so I keep getting sort of enamored looking out the window as well outside of my office here. I digress for a second, but just in case you're wondering, what is she looking at? But we're going to talk about the pause, the benefits and the ROIs. It's measurable. It's fascinating, in fact. And I have quite a few today, so button up or buckle up and get ready. Because these aren't just talking about a pause from alcohol, though I am focusing on that a little bit as sort of a good example in the framing of today's episode, but about these micro resets and taking breaks in general, and how it's not about forever, but how you can have various and many potential benefits from taking a temporary, purposeful break and the benefits that you can gain for your health. So the first benefit of a pause is a return of your mental fuel, your mental energy, and a return to what researchers call vigor. Oh my goodness, vigor, what a word. Our brains, it turns out, need recovery the same way our muscles do. Surprise? Probably not a surprise. It's sort of like oh, that makes sense. But when you push without a pause, you can deplete your attention. You can deplete your mood. You can deplete your motivation. So taking a pause matters. A 2022 meta-analysis, a study of studies, found that even tiny deliberate breaks can recharge our focus and ease fatigue. So 2 minutes here, 10 minutes there, and you're essentially restoring the brain's ability to think clearly. So those are little mini resets. And it's sort of like cleaning the lens as you go instead of like staring harder through the smudge. And I've done both because I wear glasses, and sometimes you just wear them and you just suffer through it until finally you're like, actually, I could do something to improve. Why don't I take a pause, clean my glasses properly? And wow, you see things more clearly. So that's number one. Number two is a benefit about, and it's one of my favorites. It's like breaking our habit loop. And I've talked about this before in other episodes, but it's when we interrupt our automatic routine. The glass of wine while cooking, our endless scrolling before bed. It's the reflexive yes to every request sometimes. They are like well-worn circuits in our brain. They're the same things that when we're changing habits, we want, to fire more effectively and to practice. But sometimes they become so automatic, and sometimes they're the ones that could potentially do harm to us, that we need to have a structured way to disentangle those a bit. These patterns actually live in a structure called the basal ganglia in our brain's efficiency center. And once a routine is stored there, it sort of runs on autopilot. That's the efficiency, the beauty of efficiency in our body and nature. It's cue, routine, reward. It's sort of a circuit. That's why you can brush your teeth or drive to work or pour your drink with almost without thinking. You can just go on autopilot. A pause from that, though, interrupts the circuit. It literally, like, think of pressing pause. It's like switching the brain from cruise control back to manual. And it gives your prefrontal cortex, that part of your brain that is decision making, a chance to take over again. And that's really cool. So, breaking the habit loop. The third benefit is what happens when we simply notice what we're doing. Mindfulness and awareness checks. Mindfulness research shows that awareness itself can help change behavior. In mindfulness-based programs for habitual and addictive patterns, people were taught to pause before acting, like to notice a craving, to name it, and to breathe through it for acting on it. The result was that the urges lost intensity. Our neural pathways that are associated with our impulse control, they strengthened. So it's like realizing when you're holding your breath and exhaling, it's that process of letting it out. It's all it takes sometimes. One moment of recognizing it and shifting from reaction to choice and letting the balloon deflate a little bit, the urge lose its intensity, and gaining some control, strengthening control. Isn't that cool? I think it's amazing. Next benefit is physical, and it's hydration. So we're talking about taking a break from alcohol, like a dry January. And it's easy to forget that alcohol dehydrates us, or simply that it takes the place of when water could take its place. And already most of us simply don't drink enough water or hydrate enough throughout the day. In fact, at any time, about 75% of us are slightly dehydrated. That's according to the research that I've shared with you before. And here's where it gets interesting. Our brains are roughly 75% water, and hydration is directly tied to focus and alertness and performance. A 2024 study from Penn State, published in the American Journal of Human Biology, showed that even mild dehydration can lower performance on attention-related tasks, so what we put our attention to. And this slowdown, you don't necessarily notice it until you fix it and you feel like more focus, more attention, better performance, and you see it. So when you replace, say, a nightly drink with something that's more hydrating or an extra glass of water and focus on that, we're not just like being good or taking time off. We're literally fueling our better thinking. A fifth benefit I want to share with you is about functional hydration and absorption. So if you've heard me talk about hydration, it's a favorite topic and it's an important one. It's equal parts science, but it's also sort of ritual and tactical. So plain water is great, but it doesn't always absorb as efficiently as you might think. So what instead? The World Health Organization actually has an oral rehydration formula that's, a precise mix of sodium and potassium and glucose that dramatically improves absorption in the gut. And they've shown this because in areas of the world where dehydration is bigger than just mild, and it can be dire, and it can be a cause of mortality, they have oral rehydration formulas that can help and have defined that in the science over time. So they're scientifically optimized and globally validated and simple to replicate ways at home to hydrate. And so I do encourage, not always, but some of the electrolyte mixes. I don't steer clear away from having a little carbohydrate there or beside it. And there is something, and maybe we'll revisit this because there's some trends about this right now. There is something to having hydration that goes beyond just simple water to help as well. So another way to quantify the benefits of taking a break are some behavioral resets. And this is a big one. And this may help more in the broader idea of taking a pause and taking a pause that refreshes, a reset that is intentional. The pause doesn't just apply to our glass, it's any automatic pattern, basically. So if we look to something else that's very frequent and probably is daily, if not hourly, that's our digital habits. A 2021 systematic review of digital detox studies. So they use the word detox because it's clever and it's alliterative, digital detox. But people who take short breaks, not long breaks, but short breaks from smartphones had boosted well being and better self-control in many participants. And this has been shown in other research. There was researchers from Georgetown University that followed nearly 500 people who cut their screen time in half for 2 weeks. They slept better, longer, I should say, each night. They reported lower anxiety, and they described themselves as more focused and less frazzled. That is some incredible biology at work, a pause that breaks the loop again and has these kinds of physical benefits. So we see that in a behavioral way. And we see that with the digital pauses as an example. There's also a deep psychological payoff here that we're thinking about, and we should be thinking when we're taking a pause. And we're using, again, alcohol or the dry January as the example. But American Psychological Association, a team of researchers reviewed years of research and concluded that planned breaks can improve mood, performance, and overall well-being. Those are huge wins. And the science is sort of just, like grandma said, it's like old wisdom. You step away and you come back clearer. What a nice thing, and research supports it. So it's not indulgence to take a pause. It's not bad to take a pause. There's no judgment on it, but it can be an efficiency approach to help us step back, come in, return clearer. Finally, I want to just mention before we move on in today's episode, one return, which is an opportunity to do some myth busting. You've probably heard of the dopamine detox. Dopamine isn't just something you drain from your body and then refill like a tank of gas. But when you change patterns of stimulation, like getting fewer notifications on your phone or taking a break from alcohol or practicing more mindful moments, it does help us reset how we perceive the rewards and how we get healthy dopamine responses. So we're not like making a chemical detox here. It's really a behavioral one. And that's what gives us back some balance between cravings and calm by inserting these. So when you put all this together, we get neuroscience, we get physiology, we get psychology, we get the biology, which is part of the physiology. We get all the parts. The returns on taking a pause can look pretty extraordinary. You may get some, you may get all, you may get a few. You will get something by taking a moment when you have something you identify that has become very automated, that you're either concerned about or that you want to take a healthy pause from. And it's a reminder that you can choose any day, at any time. You can start shifting a habit. You can interrupt the loop. And you can use your 1,000 waking minutes in a way that can restore you rather than drain you. So that's a little bit about like looking at why taking, a step back or taking a break sometimes can bring us benefits according to the science. Okay, so we've just talked about the returns on our intentions, why this matters, and how small shifts can ripple through the body and our nervous system by taking a reset or taking a break, for example, in this case from alcohol. Whether it's a few weeks, a month, you get to set the course. Before I move to some practical tips about how to take a pause and identify what that habit or that automated habit is that you want to just explore, I'd like to do a mindful minute together to kick off the year. It's the simplest of resets that allow us to come back to our present, to be here together, to share some time. So let's sit comfortably, uncross your legs if they're crossed, as mine were. Sit in a way that feels easy to you. Let your feet feel grounded beneath you. Your shoulders soften. Your gaze, if you can, unless you're driving, look down or look out. Let your gaze become gentle. Let's take one preparatory inhale in through the nose. Exhale through the mouth. Let's have a mindful minute together. I encourage you just to take a natural pause between your breath. Recognize that there's quiet space in there. That's where choice lives. If your mind is drifting, try to come back to your breath. Maybe say something silently like, I am present. I am aware. One more slow inhale. Pause and exhale. That's our mindful minute. Even a brief pause like this can help reset your nervous system and create space for a different choice. Thank you for sharing that mindful minute with me today. Okay, so now let's bring this to real life for a moment. Today we're talking about taking a pause from alcohol, but everything that I'm about to share can apply just as easily to your other habits that you might want to take a pause and reset on. It could be sugar, it could be screen time, it could be late night snacking, even saying yes to too many things as we get into a habit of at times. And this doesn't have to be a month-long declaration unless you wish to, but set a start and an end and go for it. You get to choose the sort of container where this lives. And for some people, it's a week, some it's 2 weeks, some it's a month. But make it something you actually look forward to. Not that it's easy every moment, but something that's doable long enough, though, that you can notice something and that you might not struggle, but have to work and be playful and observe what's happening a few times. And you don't have to do it right all the time. You don't have to do everything, but you can try one or two of these tips and see what fits for you. So, number one of the biggest reasons that habits stick is because of ritual. So we can use that to our advantage, but we'll refine it. So a refined ritual. So instead of stripping it away altogether, and then you're left with a void or a gap, we want to keep it. So still use a nice glass and pour something cold and beautiful into it. It could be with some citrus, with some, an herbal infusion. It could be bubbly water because, going from a glass of wine, if that's what you enjoy, to a, water glass with plain water does feel like you're reorienting a lot more than just taking away the alcohol. You're changing up the ritual. You can keep it. When I take a pause from alcohol, I still love the end of the day moment or that transition moment. It's not necessarily the end of the day, but at that transition time that many of us have, the signal that the work day is done, the 5 o'clock somewhere moment, but it doesn't have to be wine or alcohol. I will often get sparkling waters, and get into a nice habit of that again and grab some citrus or make an infusion or do something that makes it a little bit special. I call it a special thing of the month. Sometimes we have fun names, maybe a nutritious option. I've just been sampling some of these really interesting, spritzy, low calorie, natural sort of, they call them tonics, but they're interesting, like elderflower beverages that are sparkling water with the essence of something in them. They can be colorful, they can be hydrating, they can be really fun. They just don't have alcohol. So it's the same ritual with a different result. And another tip is establishing like your pre-commitment to this and your intention. So it is important for you to decide, this part really matters. Like, not rigidly, but like clearly what you're choosing versus what you're taking away. I'm choosing hydration so I wake up clear tomorrow, sleep better tomorrow, see what it's like. Make it a benefit statement, even if you're removing a habit or removing an action or behavior in your life. The way you frame it can change a lot. It reframes what you're giving up to what you're choosing. And ultimately, what will come along is what you're gaining. But what you're choosing, that's powerful. Your brain will respond accordingly as well and very differently to that. And I've seen this again and again. When the decision is already made, there's less negotiation in the moment then. So you state it, you make your pre-commitment, you line yourself up with your intention, and you go for it. And you'll have less mental fatigue over the, am I really doing this? Or any of the lamenting that happens. And it's much more easier. And you know this. Next one, this is a tip that if you've ever met with me professionally, or we've ever talked hydration, or you've ever been in a room where I'm talking about anything having to do with hydration, another great tip for hydration, especially around if you're taking a break from alcohol, is don't forget to eat your water. Something surprising to a lot of people, a lot of our hydration comes from food. Up to 20% of your daily recommendation can come from our watery foods, our fruits, our vegetables, our soups, our salads, even beans, and even bread is a source of hydration. So fruits and veggies like lead the pack, 70 to 97% when I've looked at it closely, percent water by weight. But like I said, soups and salad counts, everything. And I can tell you that it's not the removing the alcohol, it's the hydrating and using foods as well. That clients have told me that they feel remarkably better during their pause. And it's not because they're dramatically challenging themselves, taking something away, but they're adding something in that's actually not only more nutritive, but hydrating for all the reasons that I've stated before. Next is have a social strategy. This is important. Social situations can be challenging. A lot of us dine out. We get into a habit of, can I take your drink order? Oh my goodness, that's like the first thing out of a server's mouth. A lot of people feel a sense of relaxation once the food ordering gets underway. But here's a really, I think, good strategy. At least I've gotten good feedback about it. And that is to order first. Order first your drink. Order first your meal if you're working on mealtime habits, but order first because social situations are where we tend to wobble. And with your conviction to do something, it can be incredibly powerful because if you didn't know, your social actions can become contagious. Instead of saying, I'll have what she's having, if you set the course, you know what? There's probably other people there that want an opportunity to say, I'll have what she's having. I'll have what he's having. When you order a sparkling water in a martini glass for fun, order confidently. And then other people will come along very likely, I'll do that. That sounds good tonight. It almost gives permission and you set the course. This goes back to you having your intention, you having your pre-commitment, you having your, this is what I'm choosing. And then you don't need to explain, you don't need to justify what you ordered, does all the talking necessary there. If someone or the rest of the party doesn't, they go on their merry way with their wine drinking, that's great too. You can privately feel the strength of making that choice tonight, today, whenever it is. And the final tip is really about how to extend the pause into other spaces. If you want to extend the benefit a little bit, you can do what's called stacking. You stack one pause upon another. So if you've ever tried or you've become good at a digital sunset, meaning sort of setting like no screens after 8 p.m., or I put my phone in do not disturb mode and plug it into the wall in the kitchen, but I go to the living room or den or bedroom, then you already are doing what's called a digital sunset. And I encourage that. That would be another way to take a pause and to start some habit change. And you may have already noticed your sleep or your mood for the next day change. So this isn't about doing more, but maybe you're stacking that habit one to another. The changes beget and help each other out. So you're taking your pause from alcohol for the month. It's one thing that you're doing on top of the other thing that you're already good at. You're connecting them so they reinforce your effort. And the benefit, even the small pauses there, will be more. The sleep, the focus, the energy, all those pieces. And you can attribute some of those benefits right away to the other reset or pause. So think of these tips less as a rule set, but as an experiment. Maybe you try on one or you try on another. Maybe some relate to you. And do remember, you're not committing forever. We're talking about the habits that you want to just create a window of listening and being aware and trying them on for a period of time. So try one or two of these tips, see what feels supportive to you, and do it for now, whatever that container, that time period is. And then you build over time with your habits. So the pause that refreshes, that's our episode for today. And it isn't about what you are giving up in this time period, but what you gain. So if you call it dry January, that feels like you're not doing something, that's one framing. But we're really focusing on what you get to choose toward and what you hope to gain from it, energy or focus or connection in a different way. And also some clarity around how you're choosing to spend your 1,000 waking minutes each day. So sometimes it's not about what we pour into the glass, but what we pour into our moments. That's the little poetic moment I want to give you today that end up changing us. So not what we pour into our glass, but what you pour into your moment that end up changing us for today. And when you practice a pause, whether it's from alcohol, screens, sugar, or the speed of our lives, you're not pressing stop. That's exactly why we call it a pause. You're pressing toward a reset. You're choosing to look at your patterns in a new way with curiosity and wonder instead of criticism. And what follows might be surprising. You might find you benefit psychologically, emotionally, physically, in all those ways I mentioned. So let's keep it practical. Let's keep it simple. And let's do this together. If you've enjoyed today's exploration, I'd appreciate you sharing with me. You can reach me at wendybazilian.com what you intend to do. Sometimes stating our intentions is a good way to do it, privately or otherwise. Share the episode with a friend if you think that there's something that might connect with him or her or they. And connect. Just connect. I appreciate that. Because when we connect with each other, we find that we have tips and ideas and support for each other, and we can help each other along this journey that we call life. So you can find the resources from today's episode in the description of your podcast, in the show notes. You can find me at wendybazilian.com. You can follow along on Instagram at 1000 Waking Minutes. And thank you for sharing a few of your waking minutes with me today. I'm Wendy Bazilian, your host, and until next time, be well. Thank you for tuning in to 1000 Waking Minutes. A huge thank you to our amazing collaborators, including our production and marketing teams, and Gabriela Escalante in particular. To the ultra-talented Beza for my theme music, my lifelong friend and artist, Pearl Price Photography and Design, to Daniel Ballantyne, Jen Nguyen, Joanna Powell, and of course my family, and everyone working tirelessly behind the scenes. And to you, our valued listeners, I so appreciate your support. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider leaving a comment, writing a review, and giving 1000 Waking Minutes, that's us, a 5-star rating. And please hit subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you enjoy your podcasts. Please follow and stay connected at wendybazilian.com. And don't forget to share with your friends. Your support helps us grow and bring you more great content. Until next time, find some simple opportunities to optimize those 1,000 waking minutes each day.
I'm saying yes